I got a big old rutabaga in my hand and we're going to make a puree out of it today. It's going to go underneath a delicious pork tenderloin. Now, normally I like to do this with the protein, but I don't want to be getting pork juice all over my kitchen. So we're tossing around the rutabaga today. We're going to do a stuffed pork tenderloin over a rutabaga puree with Brussels sprouts. Each component on its own is extremely simple. What's going to make this look like a Michelin dinner is the fact that all of these extremely simple elements are going to be layered elegantly. I'm Executive Chef James McInnes, and welcome to my kitchen. So the very first place we need to start off with is the bacon. Let's get it sliced up. I want to use the bacon in two places. I want to put it in with the Brussels sprouts, and I also want to put it inside the pork tenderloin. Now I have some oil from before filming where I roasted my garlic. I like to start my bacon in just a little bit of oil because the bacon meat will start to stick to the pan before the fat renders. Although it is self-oiling, it's not right off the bat. Now about halfway through, you're going to want to pour half of it out, the fat that is, because it will start to boil rather than fry, and it'll take longer. Just make sure you go back to it. Now this comedy routine is me just pretending that the rutabaga is a lot harder to deal with than it actually is. Well, half and half. I mean, it was a bit of a pain to split in half at first, but after I got it in half, it was fine. Rutabaga, if you're not familiar with it, is a hybrid of turnip and cabbage. So there I am with the Dalstrong Devastator and then the Dalstrong Punisher, just making a joke of it. It peels really easy, just as easy as a carrot. If you have a hard time making any angles with the peeler, just keep trimming it down. You don't need to use a whole rutabaga like I did. If you're just serving two people, probably half a pound is more than plenty. So we're just making a puree out of it, like I said. So all we're going to do is cut it up into cubes and then put it into our pot. And then what we want to do is bring it to a boil, let it go for about 45 minutes in total. Since rutabagas grow underground, anything from underground starts in cold water, anything above ground starts in hot water. So you're gonna see I had a bit of a problem misjudging the size of my pot. Oh well, I guess, right? So let's get some seasoned water in there with some salt, put it on the back of the stove, and remember guys, keep checking your bacon. You don't want to burn it while this is going on. Make sure you give it some flips and some stirs. Okay, moving on to our next component is going to be the parsnip. So you're going to want to add the parsnip into the rutabaga at about half an hour in. The parsnip, being much smaller and not as dense, is only going to take about 15 minutes or so to boil out to be good consistency to use for puree, whereas that rutabaga is going to take about 45 minutes. So after I cut it up, I just put it off to the side while I continued on with my work. The next item I thought made sense to prep up was the pears. I wanted to get all my peeling done, so I chose to use 1 pear per tenderloin. After I got them peeled, you're just going to cut them in half. And then you want to get the core out. What works really good is a melon baller or a half tablespoon measuring spoon, and you can come right underneath the center of the core. Watch, just like this. You can come right underneath it and get it. And if you go up to the stem, you can pull the stem up with it, or if you go down to the bottom, you can pull a little bit of root out with it. See how easy that was? Now we're just going to dice this up into smaller pieces because this is going to go inside of our tenderloin. Then just put it off to the side. So after the bacon just finished, and remember to keep checking it while you're working, where you're going to want to get your onions diced, and I wanted to use the bacon fat for the onion dice. So after you get them all diced off, get them into your pan of bacon fat and put it on a medium-low heat. Make sure to check it during the cooking process. You don't want to burn them while you're paying attention to something else. This dinner, I would give it a 3 out of 5 stars for difficulty. only because of time management and stuff like that. If you're gonna cook this with a partner, I would drop this down to 1 star because it's really just paying attention to the bacon and the onions in the background. So to figure out how much walnuts I needed, I kind of just laid out what the length of a tenderloin looked like and how wide I thought it needed to be. I ended up using about 3/4 of a cup. So chop them all up, rock that knife back and forth, and then we're just going to slide them off into a bowl. So the big step next is going to be to clean up those pork tenderloins. You're going to get your boning knife. You should definitely have a boning knife for cleaning the silver skin. A paring knife with a good tip will work. It's got to be a pointy tip, but a boning knife does work better. The membrane on it though, the membrane, you don't need a knife for the membrane. You can just come in with your hand, with your fingers, and you can just rip the membrane off. The silver skin right under my right hand, that's the silver skin, the stuff that's not coming off right now. And that silver skin is where it connects to the next muscle. There's all primals on all kinds of animals have that, and you definitely want to remove that. Trying to chew through that after it's cooked is like trying to chew through a rubber band. So you just want to leave as much meat on your tenderloin as you can. Slip your knife in and then rock it back the other way. I have a full-length video on how to do this with a beef tenderloin. If you want to check and watch that video, I'll try and link it up below or down or somewhere. You can search my my playlists too. And once we get that open, or cleaned I mean, we're gonna get the second one done. I'm doing 2 because my wife can't have a lot of bacon, so I stuffed one with bacon and one without bacon. So since we're gonna stuff this, we're gonna cut it halfway down the center. Then we're gonna come in on an angle through each of the 2 halves now. And that way we can kind of walk the meat open to get it larger before we start pounding it with a hammer. Make sure you get this done on both sides. And then the hammer is going to make sure that we get a nice even distribution of meat. You want it to be even so it cooks evenly, that we don't have raw spots and overdone spots. Now, silly me, I don't have a meat tenderizer. So I went out to the garage. I was given a rubber mallet for Christmas that I haven't used yet. So well, that's the nice thing about saran wrap, I guess. We got the saran wrap down on here, and I'm just giving it a go to even out the meat to make it a good even cook. I might be hitting it a little excessively. You know, I'm sure there's a meat pounding joke that can be made here. Pound your meat. Give it a good whack. Anywho's, now that part's done, we're going to season the inside of the meat. We're going to season the outside too after we roll it. I was starting to run low on camera storage, so after I rolled and tied it off, I started dumping the files onto my laptop, so you do miss me sliding it into the oven. So that's the big thing that you're going to miss today. So I put salt and pepper on the inside, and then I'm going to come back in with some cumin. Cumin is one of my favorite spices. And then we're also going to use some thyme. I have a very hard time cooking pork and beef without thyme. I think it adds so much of a different depth that it's something that you just can't overlook. And in today's dish, we can use thyme as one of the ingredients that ties everything together. We can put thyme in the pork, we can put thyme on the Brussels sprouts, and we can put thyme in the puree. So I'm using half of my walnuts right up the center. I'm also going to use a little less than half of my pears because my wife's tenderloin is not going to have any walnuts. So I'm going to make up the bulk of the difference with the pears. Now we're going to grab some goat cheese and we're going to sprinkle that in. You could go more cheese, you could go less cheese, you could go no cheese. I like goat cheese and I think this is a great place to use it. There we go. Now you're going to want to wash your hands several times throughout this. I washed my hands after and the honey. There goes the honey. So I washed my hands before I grabbed the honey. I want to get the goat cheese off of them. And honey is another tie-in ingredient because you can put honey on the puree. I wouldn't do it while you're cooking it though. I would do it at the end as a finish. There goes the bacon. And then you can also put honey over the Brussels sprouts as a finish. I wouldn't cook that. This is the only place I would cook the honey. So you want to roll this up nice and tight. Then you want to get your butcher's twine, tie up one side, and then this is how I like to make my lattice. I'm not really sure visually how to describe it, but you just kind of do what I'm doing there and you end up with it nice and tied off. The more you put in, the more ribs you add to it, I guess you can call them, or trusses maybe. The more you add, the tighter you can get, more uniform it can be. Then we're going to come once up across the back, tie it off together, and then that hit the oven. Now the microwave had beeped. It was 30 minutes. I was using the microwave timer. I don't know why I chose to put half the onions in the puree here. Probably would have been better off to do it into the blender. But that needs to go for another 15 minutes. Now, using a paring knife, I'm going to take the bottom off of the Brussels sprouts and cut them in half. This is also a fast way of checking for bruised outer leaves that you can get rid of while you do that. That's going into the bacon pan now. I guess the onion pan. And those are going to brown up while we make the puree. See, everything's coming together now. We're going to strain off the puree liquids. It's been 15 minutes. We're going to get that into our blender. And boy, did I have a hell of a time doing this, because I couldn't find the stick thing that goes into the top of the blender. So I had to stop a couple times. I overloaded it too. I'm not going to lie to you. I overloaded the blender. I tried to do it in 2 halves. I probably should have did it in 3, maybe even 4. I don't know. Maybe if I had the stick thing, it would have made a difference. And it just wasn't. So yeah, see, I'd use a spoon and do it kind of in the middle, and it just wasn't doing exactly what I wanted. But then I remembered that I had some 35% cream in the fridge. Yeah, you can see me kind of looking through the open cupboard, seeing if I can just catch the stick part. So anyways, we're gonna get that out of the blender and get the second half in. And it's during the second half where I'm like, hey, I have some 35% cream in the fridge. Why don't I just go ahead and do that? I think I'm probably snacking on some of the bacon, to be honest. But like I said, if you're just gonna do a reasonable amount, like 1 pound of turnip or rutabaga, then you probably have no problem doing this in your blender in one shot. If I used 3 parsnips for that giant rutabaga, if I were going to do a 1 pound rutabaga, I would probably or a half a pound rutabaga, I would probably limit myself to 1 parsnip. Yeah, see? There we go. Halfway through this blend is when I started using the whipping cream. Give it a good mix. I didn't show any of the blending except for coming up. I wanted to save your ears from the high, loud volume of the blender. Yeah, so I did turn the volume down for that. I didn't want to, blow your earphones or anything. And now we can get the puree out of the blender, and it's time to check it for seasoning. And I completely forgot about the honey when I went to plate this, because I was going to drizzle the honey on top of the puree on the plate. So I'm using pepper, I'm going to use thyme, and I'm going to use salt in here. And those are going to be the key flavorings, because the rutabaga picks up a lot of sweetness out of the parsnip. You don't have to do a lot to this. It might look like an excessive amount of salt, but there's a large amount of rutabaga in there. We're going to mix her all up, and then this is the point where you want to taste it, because if you didn't put enough seasoning in it, you need to fix it. So after everything gets mixed up, and you can see how nice and hot it is, you can see that steam just pouring right off of it. So I like to take 2 spoons. That way I can stay sanitary. I can taste off 1 spoon. It's kind of okay. I'm not really sure. I've decided to go for it. We're going to put some more salt in there. Mix that up. And then see, now I can go back for another taste without putting my spoon in my mouth and back into it. It's pretty good. So to plate up, we're going to put some puree right in the middle of a plate. I chose a nice blue colorful plate because I thought the puree might be a little bland. I have an excessive amount of bacon here because I have about a half a pound of bacon in my half of the Brussels sprouts. Like I said, my wife's Brussels sprouts are bacon free. And then we're going to carve up that tenderloin. Yes, I'm sorry, it's slightly overcooked. I wanted to pull it out of the oven at 135 and let it carry over. I pulled it out of the oven around 145 and then it carried over. But when you are doing this kind of stuff, there's a lot of moving parts and sometimes you just miss. So I'm going to put some extra pieces on my plate because it's already 1 in the afternoon and I haven't eaten yet today. And let's find out how I like this. I have a pretty stuffed plate. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, so there might be more on your plate than you might want. I know it looked like I was cooking for an army with the whole rutabaga. I was going to go in our fridge. We'll have the rutabaga puree all week long with different proteins. The Brussels sprouts, you can see I got some nice color on them. The bacon is good. I put half the Brussels sprouts in the fridge without any bacon because my wife can't have bacon. Well, too much bacon. Now, the puree, you would have seen the struggle it was. I couldn't find the stick part for the blender to, mix it up. So, anyways, it's really good. The parsnip adds some, I don't know why I'm holding this still. The parsnip adds quite a bit of extra sweetness. Now, part we're all looking for, the pork. Yeah, that's it. Again, I made 2. One without bacon in it. And the bacon inside definitely adds some more fat and more moisture to tenderloin, which is notoriously dry. Like, I know it might look like it's tough because of how much I'm chewing, but I'm taking big bites. I'm not cutting it with a fork. So the goat cheese works really good with the walnuts and the bacon. So I did, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Anyway, I hope in post-edit I'm able to get this down because I had like an hour and change in footage so far. Hoping I can get this down to about 15 minutes for you. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, who knows. But this is definitely a good combination of flavors. I highly recommend the book, The Flavor Bible. I'm starting to use that book to, a lot of times as a professional, I'm right just based off of experience. But every once in a while you say, what if I try this one ingredient that seems weird to me? And you check a book like The Flavor Bible and you're like, oh, it's there. It's weird, but other people seem to think it works too. So you're not totally out in left field. And I would definitely suggest pick up a copy of that. I don't have any affiliate links. Not big enough yet to get into that stuff. So anyways, just leave me a comment down below if you're going to try this. Highly recommend. You're gonna knock out about an hour and a half to do this. So this is probably gonna be dinner for a special occasion or a Sunday night if that's what you like to do on Sundays. You could also definitely split this up between your partner and the two of you could have a fun afternoon of making something like this. Anyways, like I said, I've been Executive Chef James McInnes, and thanks for hanging out with me.